Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first webinar of 2018 for the P&G Alumni Network. I'm incredibly excited for our topic today. We're going to be talking with Jeff about what it means to be a consultant and him and the lessons learned from being a consultant. I remember my first experience with a consultant was at P&G. And I was looking over a contract that we had with the consultant that we were bringing in. And at the time, I wasn't familiar with P&G's finance metrics, where M was 1,000 and MM meant a million. So on the contract, I remember seeing that we were paying this consultant 50M. And I was like, holy cow, I need to become a consultant if we're paying them $50 million. But learned very quickly M was 1,000, so $50,000. M was 1,000, MM was a million. I assumed that MMM would be a billion, but turns out that that is market mix modeling at P&G. So a lot of confusion for me as a new hire, but that was my first exposure to consultants, and certainly became something that I became interested in, because it's kind of like, at the high level, this idea of like, oh, we get to tell people what to do and then they go and do it. You don't have to do that work. But I'm sure Jeff is going to inform us a little bit more that that's not quite what it is to be a consultant, but also if we want to create a practice as a consultant, what that looks like and what he's learned. So I'm incredibly excited for that. Before we turn it over to Jeff, just a couple of announcements for the webinar series so that you know kind of what's going on. As a reminder, the webinar series is something that we do on a mostly monthly basis. The goal is to connect members, get kind of conversations going, provide some insight, and leverage the expertise of the people and the network. We all say that whenever we talk about what we miss the most about P&G, it's most often the people. There's a chance to leverage the expertise of those people. But the Alumni Network is certainly more than just the webinar as well. It's a nonprofit founded by former P&Gers, where I think we're at about 37,000 members worldwide now, 45 chapters worldwide. It's officially recognized and supported by P&G. And the whole goal is, one, the connections that we talked about, enrichment as well, but also philanthropy. So it's a great organization to certainly be a part of. In addition to that, we do things like the global conference. We're still kind of coming off the fantastic 2017 global conference that took place in Cincinnati. The next one will be coming up in 2019. But it's a great way to kind of get together locally. We heard from great leaders. David Taylor came and spoke. We heard from Gary Vaynerchuk as well. So these in-person events are a phenomenal way to stay connected with the P&G Alumni Network. You can also check out for local kind of chapter meetings in your area for that same kind of in-person experience as well. As far as the webinar technology goes, just in case this is the first one that you are joining, a couple of things to know. You are seeing a now viewing screen, which should be a little bit of a picture-in-picture kind of view, because I'm showing you what it looks like. You'll notice that there are no webcams. We've learned that just based with kind of the internet broadband in some areas, that you get to kind of a video where the audio is out of sync with the video, and you're reminded of old school kind of kung fu flicks, and it gets distracting and all that. So instead, we focus just on the slides and the audio so you can hear that. You will also notice that all the lines are muted. That's just so that we don't hear dogs barking in the background or the UPS guy showing up or anything like that. And instead, what we do have as the option is you can enter questions. So in your right sidebar, if you have a question as Jeff is speaking and you want clarification or want to explore an idea, certainly feel free to enter those questions. We'll have a spot at the very end where I'll be moderating some of those questions, so certainly feel free to share those as we go. With that being said, I do want to then turn it over to Jeff. So Jeff is the CEO and president of SynFiny Advisors, and prior to starting Symphony, Jeff spent 25 years in finance at P&G. Over his last 9 years at P&G, he oversaw the global financial planning and banking services and led the redesign of business processes and profit forecasting. In addition to that, Jeff owns a real estate management company, is a partner, CFO, in several other ventures, and he's also the president of the Southwest Ohio Association for Financial Professionals. That's a lot of words to speak, but all kind of to the credibility of what Jeff does. So Jeff, I'm excited to have you, and I'm going to go ahead and start to transition the presenter view over to you, but welcome.
Thank you very, very much. Let me see if I can make this work. Hopefully it did. Hopefully you're now all seeing the lead-in screen for the webinar today, and thank you very much, Andrew. I am always amazed when I hear and I talk to other companies about this P&G alumni organization and the things they do and the 37,000 some odd members. I mean, it is a great honor, one, to be here speaking to all of you today, and want to thank all of you for joining. This is one of those stories that you're excited to tell, but then part of it is you're not excited to tell it because you wanted to keep going, and the dream of it sometimes is kind of spoiled by the reality of it sometimes. But anyway, I'd like to thank the P&G Alumni Organization for giving me and the Symphony team of advisors the opportunity to share what we've learned over the past 3.5 to 4 years as we've been working on management consulting, or advisors as we call them, for SynFiny Advisors, as we gathered, I think, some interesting insights. And again, I'm going to share very openly a lot of the operational metrics for Symphony, and probably with the P&Gers on this phone call and webinar, none of you will be surprised that we have KPIs and we track our operational metrics. So hopefully I don't bore you with data. But I mean, first I just want to start a little bit about my background, just so you kind of know where I've come from. No surprise, I spent a lengthy part of my life working for Procter & Gamble. I joined P&G in finance and accounting back in '89 and spent the first 6 years in the P&G US businesses, developmental, kind of growing and developing. And it was kind of funny. I was sitting in an accounting team meeting with my boss, Jeff Kenny, in 1995, and he mentioned to me there was some job opportunity in the middle of nowhere, Russia, and would anybody be interested? And I strangely, oddly raised my hand and said, I'd like more information. And I think within minutes, I was on a plane to Moscow. I never had a passport, never had a visa, never in my life thought about, going and visiting Russia, though I wanted to live abroad at some point in my life. And so in December of '95, I flew for a look-see. Now, for anyone on the phone who's never been to Russia, my one suggestion I can give you about Russia is don't go in December and don't go in during the winter. So it was ridiculously cold, but still went. And one of these things where you're 100% positive you don't want to do it when you leave somewhere, and 100% positive you do want to do it when you arrive. But that was kind of my moment. Decided to move, and I moved to P&G subsidiary in the Novomoskovsk plant back in '96, and worked in that plant for a number of years. And it was a Russian joint venture with P&G. And I was an accounting manager and really just tasked with, kind of transforming finance and accounting processes, organization, systems in the plant. And I was in Russia for about 2.5 years until '98, when I transferred to P&G Central Asian subsidiary, which was located in Almaty, Kazakhstan. And this was more a commercial operation. It was sales and marketing for Central Asia. I was a regional finance manager, CFO for that business, and really responsible for full finance and accounting of the business, financial strategy analysis, forecasting, budgeting, tax, treasury, human resources. And given this region was a startup phase, there's a lot of organization work to do, a lot of work process, a lot of systems development for the finance function. And I was in Central Asia for about 2.5 years. And then I moved to P&G's Ukrainian subsidiary located in Kiev. And this was, again, also a commercial operation, sales and marketing in Ukraine. And there, again, I was the finance manager for that business. It was really going through a lot of rapid growth during that time frame, as P&G was the market leading consumer goods company in Ukraine already. But over a 3-year period, it bought Gillette. P&G obviously acquired Gillette, and also the largest consumer goods company in Ukraine at the time. So a lot of growth, and did that for about 2.5 years. And then for about 2.5 years, I ran a business that P&G acquired in Ukraine. So after being an expat for about a decade, we do go back home eventually. And I wound up going back to P&G headquarters, and I returned into the global business services role. For a very short time, I was in the global treasury operations role within shared services. However, I took over global financial planning and analysis as part of this GBS role. And I was in that role for about 8 years. And during that time, I led, a lot of global standard financial planning changes, work process, org design, new systems for the company. And this included really kind of how do we drive more productivity, cost savings, et cetera. Again, some very similar things that many of you on this phone may have done. But it was during this time in global business services that a couple of friends and I were sitting, around, and we pulled out a napkin and we wrote a business plan. Admittedly, it was over a few drinks. We were sitting on a balcony overlooking the Pacific, so it's a very nice place to be writing a business plan. And then a few years after that, I spent a couple weekends during the summer writing a methodology on how a large corporate would transform financial plan analysis at a large company. Absolutely no idea why I did that or why we did that. We never used it for anything until in April of 14, a tap came on my shoulder and it was time to retire from P&G. And so after 25 years at the company, I needed to find the next phase of my career. So I pulled out the napkin, I called a few friends and said, hey, we wrote this napkin and it was about starting a management consulting company. Should we do something with it? And we all said, yep, let's get started. And so we spent the summer writing the business plan, naming the company. We hired an advertising agency, created the website, and all the other fun stuff that you do when you start a business. And I shared some of this background about my career, especially Eastern Europe and the global FP&A work, because a lot of what I learned through that really is what's now helping me with Symphony. And so SynFiny Advisors, which is a management consulting practice, was launched in October of 14 for very modest beginnings. We provide a range of services, and I'll talk a bit more later on about that. But very, very modest beginnings. And so, before I kind of jump into, kind of what we learned, but just to share a little bit about kind of how has Symphony done. And honestly, it has been a challenging 3+ years for Symphony. It was not a vertical startup at all. We had some tough years, especially the second year, and I'll talk a bit about that. But the past year was very, very good for Symphony, by far records in so many ways. And the first one, organization, we call our consultants advisors. We just kind of chose that name, but our organization grew 7-fold since our launch year. Our executive advisors are really the most critical part of our business model. So being able to attract new people has been really the major part of our growth. What it's allowed us to do is not only bring in new expertise and new people to do work, but really it's allowed us to bring in new practice areas, which are critical for us as we go and help our clients make changes or improvements in their own business. The other thing, revenue. Again, I'm going to share very openly, kind of our results. Our revenue grew 10-fold since our launch year. And this has, again, only been possible because we brought in new advisors, we brought in new people with new and expanded practice areas, and we've really been blessed to find some amazing clients to work with. And again, this is not all just from one client, so we do have some diversity in our clients. So we do have one very, very large client. But almost more importantly, and we actually think about proposals almost more than revenue, and sometimes my partners get angry at me because I sometimes am more excited about a proposal than I am the revenue we deliver. But finally, our dollar per proposal has increased multiple times since our launch year. And this is a positive development because what it is an indication that our clients not only want to buy the practices and the services we provide, but they're willing to give us more business and larger, more critical engagements. So again, it's, these are kind of total revenue, total proposals written, and dollar per proposal are kind of the 3 key metrics we like to keep an eye on. And interestingly, as P&G started up, we used to get really frustrated about not landing the engagement. And over time, we realized really true success in consulting is not landing the revenue, but did the client trust you enough to ask you to participate in that proposal process? Because once you do that, once you write the proposal, that is really all you can do. The rest of it's up to the client to decide, is this something they want to do now? Is it something that it's the right timing? Or, a lot of times they find internal ways to do it. So now we almost only look at total proposals written and dollar per proposal. So according to the Scaling Up book, 94% of companies, all types of companies, never hit $1 million in revenue in a calendar year ever. Thus our 2 million in revenue and 10 times business growth is really something that the Symphony family of partners and advisors were really quite proud of. Of course, this type of growth concerns all of us since now we started 2018 and we need to deliver that same type of growth, but we feel confident we've got the team and plans in place to continue our growth. So now just one disclaimer, actually a couple disclaimers. First is, this was actually not the topic I wanted to share. I wanted to share something boring about financial plan analysis or process management or shared services. And my partners luckily convinced me that I would put all of you to sleep if I tried to talk about that. So instead they said, why don't you share the lessons we've learned being consultants over the past couple of years? So I think they're right. So hopefully you enjoy this. And then the second part of this is, I don't know how many of you have done a webinar in the past, but it's an amazingly painful way to present. And this is a picture of my daughters on a family vacation, and they play a lot of computer games. And I can compare doing a webinar to my daughters as they sit in front of their computers playing computer games, and they talk away for some reason at the computer. It doesn't respond back, doesn't say anything back to them. And I kind of find the same I'd love to find the same joy as I sit here and talk to my computer, but unfortunately it doesn't. But hopefully you find the next half hour useful, entertaining, or hopefully a combination of both. So what are the lessons that we've learned? And I share some of the perspective of anyone contemplating a consulting career, or even just suggestions on how to approach consulting at all. And over the past 3 years, there's been a number of things that we've learned. The first one is power of friends, and how do you approach the finding a new client, and how do you go about that? And so we needed to answer that question, and we learned our way through it. Does a company culture matter when you're starting up something like a consulting business? Is that important? Is it critical? And I really couldn't wait when I first started to tell the client everything I knew. And I see it all the time as we bring in new advisors. The first thing we want to do is tell everything that we know. And I was positive that things were going to go very, very fast. I knew it wouldn't take very long. We were being told by mentors it would take 3 years, could take 5 years, but we were convinced this was going to happen fast. And then I was also, and we were all, our one idea was the best idea. And and again, we learned our way through a lot of this. And then I made up a word, trust duplication, which is I'm positive I can do it alone. I don't need others. I can do this alone. And then finally, the power of fun, which is work can't be fun, can it? And so as we kind of went through this over the past, kind of 3.5, 4 years, these were some of the things we learned. So the first one was really just this power of friends. The first thing I did when it was time to think about consulting was I went out and talked to friends in the P&G network and beyond. It could be former P&Gers at other companies, other P&G alumni, current P&Gers, friends and colleagues outside of P&G, people I'd networked with. And I didn't go about it to ask them for help about getting me work, but I was really asking them their thoughts on how to approach starting up a business. And in this case, one that just happens to be doing consulting. And this type of reaching out to friends resulted in a number of interesting things happening. The first one, and these pictures here show a lot of it, is many of them wanted to be part of the journey. There are over 40 plus former P&Gers part of the Symphony team. I'm sure some of the names you'll recognize: Wendy Sneed, Scott Liston, Nat Brooks, Christian Lee, Georg Schlangen, Beth Ewing, Janelle Moore, Ann Campbell, Pam Walsh, Frank Paul, Larry Williams, Joe Osterman, Doug Shoup, Kevin Larkin, to name a few. So that was one thing that was very interesting. As we talked, and as I kind of met and met up with people, and my other partners did the same, there were a lot of people who wanted to be part of the journey. Many of them became clients. 95% of Symphony's revenue has come from former P&Gers, now in senior leadership positions at other companies. As of today, we've not actually done any work for P&G. Many of our friends introduced us to others. In fact, our first client came from somebody I met at a beer lecture. So you never know where introductions may happen that help lead to work. Many of them provided insight, which helps us pivot our strategy, and I'm going to talk a bit about pivoting and what that means. And then we networked across the globe. My personal LinkedIn account, when I left P&G, had about 100 contacts, and now has almost 1,700 contacts. And one thing that I always find interesting, I'm always getting asked by people of, why did people want to help you? Why do people want to help Symphony? And I simply respond, people want to help others, but many times it's the individual, myself, who didn't want to ask for help. And rarely have I asked for help from someone that did not want to help. And at a minimum, they'll send me to someone who may be able to help. I believe I only had one person out and out told me no. And as I was kind of funny, I was asking for help with business development. I was a finance guy. I now needed to do business development with Symphony. And he, told me quite pointedly that I could not sell. I would be terrible at it. However, he politely did point out in a direction where I could go get help. And I did explain that, we didn't have money to hire someone outside, but oddly, that advice was a motivator on its own. So my advice is talk to friends or colleagues. They want to help, and they're very willing to help. The next is shared values. And again, it probably comes as no surprise to a P&G network or alumni group to hear that core values is important to a company. And they are similar to many of the P&G PVPs, which makes it easier for all of us to work together as a team. And so we use our core values to attract similar advisors, similar clients, and similar partners. And we have 7 key core values as a company. First is consulting is all about people. So our people are the most critical element for what we do. They need to have shared values. They need to be able to want to work with us. So it's very important. And honesty. You know, it's our honesty that gets us rehired at a client. You know, they may not always be popular opinions, and they may not be things as we sit across from a client that they want to hear, but our honesty is one of the things I think that keep us getting rehired as we work with clients. And expertise, we are all about expertise. I'm going to talk a bit more about that, but it's a key thing that we provide to our client, and really one of the things that our clients look for. Quality, you know, we walk away from our clients after delivering the highest level of quality, and we share that as a group. You know, if we say we're going to do it, we do it. And you know, really this element of helping, you know, we've never had, and we continue not to have, scope discussions with any of our clients, because we're really focused on how do we help them improve business, how do we help them with what they're doing. And then finally, we want to work hard and we want to play hard. We all spent a long time working at a large company, and now it's time for us to enjoy ourselves. And we do keep coming back with this fun as a value, and you know, we brought this company value to life by adopting, actually it's a very funny video, we like it a lot. I use it for every one of our quarterly trainings, and it really talks about our core values and how you want to multiply them by a factor of 10. So we talk about this 10x in our business quite often, whether it's revenue, whether it's organizational growth, whether it's our core values. Now, I would share with you this funny video, but I've been told the technology doesn't work well enough. So instead, there's a link at the bottom of this slide. I hope you enjoy it. If this link for some reason doesn't work for you, let me know and we will send it out, because it is quite funny on core values. And the next lesson learned was really about listening and the art of listening. And it's really one of the more difficult traits for us to train our business development and or our advisors as they work with prospective clients or even current clients. And in P&G, we were trained providing your perspective as a critical leadership behavior. I mean, the person that talked the most tended to be the one that was promoted fastest, perceived to be more of a leader. And unfortunately, that is probably one of the least useful skills in consulting and definitely in business development. Instead, it's a person listening who lands the engagement and builds the trust. When I first started doing business development, I would go into a meeting all buttoned up and my presentation was detailed, and then I'd launch into my speech. And typically by the end of the meeting, the end of the call, I used up all the time talking myself. And I called one of my first business development calls with a good friend of mine, and I was pitching him on some financial planning and analysis work. It was really close to Christmas of 14, so very early in when Symphony started. And about halfway through my speech, and again, it was a speech, he essentially told me to shut up in a nice way. And he didn't need the services that I was droning on about, and then he practically hung up on me. I kind of figured that was the last time I would ever hear from him again. But amazingly, a few months later, he called back and he did have a need for one of our services. It happened not to be the one that I was droning on about. And even to this day, he was at that time our largest client at the time and continues to be one of our key and largest clients today. And then perseverance, this element of perseverance is, there's a study out there which we've used a lot. We talk a lot about it within Symphony, which is 80% of sales are made after the 12th contact with a prospect, and in 50% of the cases, the salesperson never makes the second contact. So there's a lot of money left on the table just because you didn't make that second contact and you didn't make it to the 12th contact. And by far, the largest Symphony client was based on a relationship that started in January of 16. And at that time, the client told me that was not a matter of if they hired us, but when they hired us. So that sounds very promising. And he just asked simply, every month, can you reach out to me? So every month, either I visited or I would talk to him. And of course, this does go two ways. So even while that's going on in the summer of 16, I was really ready to call it quits. I'd written at that point in time over $1 million in proposals and was not landing any of the work. I mean, none of the work. And I remember being in a partners meeting, sharing this frustration, and my partners convinced me that we were making progress, that the proposal should be our focus, not just revenue. And that really convinced me to stay on. And it's an interesting, kind of that perseverance, because 45 days after that date, we landed our first engagement at our largest client. And as of this week, we just completed our 22nd engagement with this client. And so I like to joke, and this is a joke, that if a restraining order hasn't been issued, it's not time to quit, stop doing business development. Again, that is a joke. Or as Jim Carrey likes to say, you're telling me there's a chance. And so pivoting is another, one of those things that, in startups, there's a lot written about it. And it really is, though, one of the most critical decisions a startup can make. And especially when it comes to changing strategy, or as it's called in the startup world, the pivot. Simon Sinek, a well-known author and marketing guru, likes to say, pivoting is a change of strategy without a change in vision. And Symphony required quite a few pivots to grow 10 times in the past year in proposals and revenue. And again, this didn't mean that we started painting people's houses, even though at times I was wondering if we should. But it did require us to look in the mirror and decide what was our vision truly going to be, and would a change in strategy still deliver that original vision? And so the first thing we pivoted from was really going from small companies to big co. As you can see on this chart, in 2015, 55% of our proposals were focused on small companies, mostly startups. By 2017, it goes to zero. And sadly to say, in 2015 and 2016, as you can see, $800,000 in proposals were made to small cos, yet only $50,000 in revenue ever came from all that work. So net pivoting our business strategy from small companies to big companies really helped us ensure that we could deliver this past year's results. The next is focusing on the what and how versus the why. And I initially talked to prospective clients about what we do and how we do it and how we're great and we've got the right way and no one else does. And most of them would fall asleep as I talked. And what I realized is the big four are much, much better at describing what should be done and how it should be done to a prospective client. I'm not going to be able to beat them at that. But what I can explain is, and clearly differentiate, is our why. And our why is simple. For SynFiny Advisors, we provide experts that are passionate about working for and caring about your company. And it is more difficult for our competition to share that same type of story. And even more difficult when I walk into the room with a team of advisors with 25 plus years of experience per person. And I recall the kickoff of one of our 2 billion plus revenue clients, and the team we staffed had about 150 years of experience across the 5 people we brought to the meeting and the kickoff. And the trust factor with our clients got quite high by leveraging that type of vast experience. And when I talked to the CFO, he mentioned that his team was concerned that we bring people with less experience and that they need to spend their time training our team. Clearly, that wasn't required. And of course, I believe sharing the story of Symphony founding with a bourbon and a balcony overlooking the Pacific Ocean helps us with our why. There's a bit of a romantic or adventure in many of us, especially in large corporates, and that just sounds fun. The other is from 1 practice area to 14 practice areas. When Symphony was launched, I was positive we would take over the world with financial planning and analysis transformation. I was even told by multiple mentors this was a bad idea. And they would ask, what if they don't want to buy that one thing? So luckily, over time, we figured out that by adding new practice areas, we had more to talk about, and more importantly, we're able to meet our clients' needs. And in fact, we deliver more revenue in the practices we created in the past year than all the others that we created in our first few months of the business launch. And then really moving from cold calling to visiting friends. In the first year of Symphony, we went to conferences, we wrote papers, we blogged, we trained, we led webinars. Again, we're glad to do this webinar. But rarely did we visit someone we knew. And that approach just does not work. There's nothing easy about consulting. You need to get out and work the pavement. You need to travel, you need to shake hands, you need to break bread. You need to meet with people that trust you. And we have a plan which gets us out traveling to key cities every quarter. It is this face-to-face with friends, clients, or prospective clients, which really has turned around our results. Now, it also has meant last year I stayed at a hotel 150 nights, so that there is a lot of traveling that goes into it. But I do recall meeting with one of our key client contacts over a coffee. And we were simply talking about the business, talking about our families, and I was getting ready to stand up and walk out. And then I did something which I normally don't do with this client. And I just casually asked him, did he need any help? And we had such a trust relationship. If he needed help, he always asked, and I didn't need to. And he paused and he mentioned that there was a critical project he was thinking about, but really hadn't gotten around to getting it started. We talked for a couple minutes, discussed it, asked for a proposal, I sent it, and the project kicked off a few weeks later. And that one single engagement is by far our largest one to date. And that may not, and I think would not have happened if I didn't happen to be sitting there over coffee. So getting out on the road and sitting face to face to people is, it is a critical element to making sure that your consulting practice can work. And the next one is what I term trust duplication. And again, consulting is all about trust. Simon Sinek says it best when he talks about a team as not being a group that works together, but one that trusts each other. And it's this intangible trust element that turns a bunch of individuals into a powerful team. And that is what Symphony has unlocked. It is far easier for the big, large consulting companies, the Bains, McKinsey's, D&T, EY, et cetera, to win business since they have built-in trust factor coming with the history of their companies, all the work they've done, all the clients they have. In addition, there's a saying in consulting that no one ever got fired by hiring the big four. There is an inherent risk of hiring small boutique consulting practices like Symphony or independent consultants. And the best way to overcome this risk paradigm is by multiplying the trust factor. It's for that reason that I may come to an initial meeting by myself. And this is more to introduce myself to a prospective client and build that initial trust. But the second time I meet a prospect, I'm always with others who can help multiply that trust factor. I call this trust duplication. And I have many examples of this approach. I think one that sticks out in my mind was I was in Chicago with a prospective client, and we were introduced to a senior leader by someone else. We actually didn't know the person. And I was with two of my partners, and so I was just kind of a fly on the wall watching this all play out. And I watched the guy walk into the room, and he really kind of stared us down. You know, it was kind of like, why am I here? And, you know, what are these people, you know, want from me? And I was immediately thinking this meeting isn't going to go well. And then the meeting started, and everybody started sharing their respective backgrounds and what they've done and who they are. And by the time we were done, you could tell he started to trust us. And once that trust was established, he immediately started sharing all the areas where he wanted help and we could help him with. And of course, you know, I think just the fact we're all here on this call and the 37,000 other P&G alumni is our P&G alumni status also provides that element of trust, which gets us many a meeting. I'm sure many of you have found that to be true. And of course, we still need to build that independent trust when meeting and working with our clients, but being able to come into the room with the expertise and experience of P&G really helps us a lot. Now, don't Google trust duplication since I really made that up, but I do think it fits and I think it helps. And then the final lesson learned is this: hey, you're retired or you decided to step away from a large corporate, so go and have fun. This needs to be enjoyable for you and those around you, and this includes your clients, it includes consultants, it includes your friends and family. These two photos are actually from the P&G Alumni Week in Cincinnati, and Symphony was blessed and lucky enough to be a sponsor for an event during the week. This is the event. We held it at the Mercantile Library, and it was filled with P&G alumni as well as 30 plus of our Symphony team of advisors. And we partied into the wee hours of the night. In fact, the picture on the right there was a Procter drink and a Gamble drink. So if you want to make a Procter drink or Gamble drink, Molly Wellman, a well-known barist here in town, made these drinks for us. And it was just a lot of fun, but we make sure to plan fun into our work. So we have quarterly meetings of our teams. We always bring everybody together every quarter to kind of update people on progress, give some trainings. And that always includes a night of celebration. We go out, we have dinner, we celebrate. We provide expensive flight or hotel to friends and family so they can join our advisors on long engagements. Or when we're in Midtown Manhattan or other fun exotic locations, we make sure to find a fun and energizing restaurant or bar to unwind. You know, we make sure we take a lot of selfies or photos. We put them in our archives and make sure we capture our moments together. And then, you know, we've got Grader's ice cream parties or Skyline chili parties with our clients. And we like to involve ourselves into helping nonprofits as much as we can as well. But we want to go do things that we enjoy. And this is really your chance to reinvent yourself. So choose something that is fun. And if you didn't, for some chance, as you left P&G and you're looking, make sure you pivot yourself personally. And so I just want to go back, and again, I did not want to spend a lot of time talking this. I want to keep it open for lots of questions, but really kind of come back real quick and just recap this a bit and hopefully again, this helps you as you contemplate, consulting as a potential career after P&G, or if you're mentoring someone or coaching someone else about thinking about it. But going back through the lessons learned, the power of friends, whether it's consultants or clients or mentors, people you meet, the networking you do, but those friends will help you. And whether you're starting what we're starting, which is by something that's a larger consulting practice, or you're going to do it on your own, in any case, those friends are going to be the people that are going to help you. So go find them and don't be afraid to go ask them. And those shared values, work with those who share your values, whether it's your, again, other consultants you want to work with, the clients you want to work with. I recall one of our clients, we met with, and they didn't like us and we didn't like them. We didn't share the same values, and though I think we probably could have convinced them to work with us, we chose not to. So find those people that share what you want to do and where you want to go, and then you'll be able to share that journey and enjoy that journey. And listening, again, I can't say enough about the importance of listening. Your clients are going to tell you what they need, but many of us just can't listen well enough to find and wait for it. So again, we like to kind of look at the share of voice when whether we're on a conference call or whether we're face to face. But that listening element is one thing that's important. And then this takes a long time. 80% of sales are made after the 12th contact. And when I was starting up, a couple of our mentors, they were partners at one of the big four, told us this takes 3 to 5 years to work. If you think you're going to make it, and again, we naively believed we'd be able to get this thing up and off the ground in the first 12 months, and that was clearly wrong. In the second year, it even became worse. And by the third year really was when it began to take off a bit. And again, we've still are in the beginnings of our journey. We're not finished our journey. We have a lot more we want to do, and hopefully 2018 continues it. But that element of perseverance this is not easy stuff. This is not trivial stuff. Be prepared to change. Adjust your approach, adjust your strategy. Don't paint people's houses if you don't like painting people's houses. If you do. But be prepared, because that first idea isn't always going to be the one that's going to get you what you want, and isn't going to be necessarily the one that delivers the vision. And for Symphony, it clearly has not been. And then this element of trust. I can't say more about that, especially in consulting. It's important. And by coming in with others, you really take that ability to build that trust duplication, that trust element, and really get people excited about what you're doing and willing to help you. Again, we've got clients who, I sometimes, am amazed because, they're going out and talking to others about us and encouraging others to come in and reach out to us or others within the same company. So, that building that trust and building it as quickly as you can is critical. And then really finally, this last one, it's, and I love this quote. It's, there's a bunch of people who've been, claim to have said this, but I think it's very nice, is, life is not measured by the number of breaths we take, but by the moments that take our breath away. And, have fun with this, enjoy it. We have, there's the days you cry, there's the days you laugh, there's the days that you wake up and you're like, maybe I'm going to stay in bed today. But if you just keep focused on this is the fun part of life. We've worked through, in my case, 25 years, and many of you probably many more. Enjoy it. So I hope that some of these lessons learned allow you to avoid some of the pitfalls we landed in our way as we started up Symphony. And again, I'm sure there's going to be many more for us to overcome as we grow and develop our business over the many years to come. But hopefully this is something that does help you as you start thinking about whether or not to be a consultant. And with that, Andrew.
Yeah, very great. I think excellent job of talking to your computer. As you mentioned at the very beginning, it is a very surreal thing when you're talking and it's just silence. But just so you know, I was laughing a few times while on mute here. So we have a few minutes for questions. We have some of those coming in. So if you have additional questions, certainly feel free to share that. A couple of just logistics things. So we will, as part of the follow-up, when we send the email out post this going down, we'll include certainly a recording, and then also we will include a link to that YouTube video that Jeff shared, so you can take a look at that. That'll come about 3 hours after this goes. People are asking, is there an opportunity to have either the slides, or do you have a handout that's associated with this that they'll be able to share some way of capturing this information, Jeff?
Yeah, we're happy to share this.
Okay, great. So yeah, that'll be shared out as well. As far as some actual other questions kind of related to the consulting businesses and the lessons you shared, one question is, what were the, you mentioned certainly year 2 being challenging, but also year 1 taking some time up. So what were, one of the top couple of challenges that you faced year 1, really just kind of developing the company?
Well, and again, this is all naively year 1, completely naive in year 1, you think you know something in year 2 and we really didn't. But year 1, you're so excited about the start. And since, almost 6 or 7 years before that, the napkin was written. And then 3 years after that, the kind of business plan, it wasn't necessarily, it was more the methodology, but the thought behind the business plan was happening. So in year 1, you're so excited about that and all the pre-thought that went into it that, really year 1 was successful because we intellectually made it successful with that. You like self-justified and rationalized why that first year was successful. Objectively, I think if I compared it to booklet, and again, there's a booklet out there that was created for this. We didn't meet year 1 booklet, but we felt good about year 2 or year 1. By the time we got to year 2 and we were so far off booklet, I didn't feel good. None of the partners felt good about it. But what we hadn't factored in was the writing of proposals, because we didn't think about that, because again, we were a bunch of finance people going in to do business development. So nobody thought about the importance of that, the pipeline you're developing and growing. And really, I think in year 1, we learned that pipeline is important and critical, and less so the revenue. And I think we got ourselves in year 1 too focused on revenue and not, I wrote $500,000 of proposals in the first 12 months. And that's actually pretty good in consulting. And by that number, or year 2, it was a couple million. And, this past year, it's, by the time we finished 17, that slide actually wasn't updated, it was 5 million. But, knowing that now is far easier than at the time, we just didn't realize that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. And kind of along that kind of starting phase, some people were curious how you funded the business to start.
Well, that's the beauty of consulting. If you do consulting and you grow it, if you invest to the pace of growth, and a lot of people struggle with that, and I actually do a lot of mentoring of other startups or other consulting startups, and a lot of people want to invest faster than revenue. And again, we're a bunch of finance people, so none of my partners wouldn't let me do that. But it's also not required, because consulting costs almost nothing anymore to start up. The big 4 probably wouldn't have tell any of us this, but technology is practically free. I mean, we use a lot of technology that cost us almost nothing. Websites you can get created fairly reasonable today, and switching stations, you don't need to, the old phone systems. They have a phone system we use in voice over IP that doesn't cost a lot. So you can start up a reasonable consulting practice. And again, ignore your time, because that isn't included into the math, with not a lot of out of pocket. Now, your time then becomes the element. You need to think about your time and the value of that time, and how much you've saved in order to kind of get that work going. But out of pocket cost, and I'm going to say this number, my partners will kill me for it, but you're talking, if you spend more than 50 in year 1, there's something wrong. You've approached it the wrong way. So I will say that. So
Yeah, no, yeah, and I think that's great perspective. You and I were chatting before the webinar started, and you're kind of asking me about my business, and I started it part-time while at P&G. And because consulting or kind of a training or more information-based type experience where it's not a physical product that you're selling, you can do that a little bit more. So I think that's great perspective. And on the side of like scaling up, so you mentioned it there's a couple of questions around that. One being if the advisors that you work with, if they are contractors, are they actual employees? Like, what's that kind of relationship like? And then kind of after that, in the scaling up process, any advice on how to do that? So some people are like, it's, that can be a challenging part, is adding new advisors and that kind of thing. Any advice on how you scale up?
So all of our advisors are 1099s. They are contractors, and even the partners, even myself. And so we've kind of gone down the Uber route from a staffing model standpoint, which again, it makes it easier for us, but it also kind of conversely makes it more difficult to scale, because if the big 4 need to hire 100 people, we need to hire 300, because I'm going to go to people who, hey, I've got something else going on, I'm on vacation, I don't want to go do that now, I've got other things going on in my life. And so we have to have a larger bench than the big four who hire W-2s. But that also allows us to, again, kind of going back to invest behind growth. We don't have to have a lot of overheads in order to scale this thing. So we bring a significant value equation to our clients because of that. They don't have to pay for a lot of overheads that some of our competitors would have to. And then from, as far as scaling, that's kind of the amazing part about this is then once you really nail that business development and, who am I going to call on and how am I going to build that trust quickly? Once you start doing that, the financials of this become very attractive because it scales very quickly. But you need to be patient enough to wait out that first kind of anchor client to then get a second to get a third. And that takes time. For us, it was almost 3 years. So.
Great. And one quick kind of additional question on that side is do you have admin people that work for you as well? On the more of logistics and those types of things?
Yeah, we've got a accounting organization, we've got IT and some admin, but again, there's not a lot. And all of you are welcome to come and see our office over in the old Chiquita building. But it's not a lot of office space, but we do have offices. And a small back office to kind of get the billings done, to get the accounting done, make sure our IT infrastructure works, and kind of coordinate some of and yes, we have expense reports just like P&G. I have to do an expense report, but we've structured it in a way so that it's the only way we can scale this. And part of our plan is to scale. We're opening our second and our third office, hopefully in the next hopefully 2 months. I can't say the names because I'm sure they're going to want to share it themselves, but our plan is to scale this, so we need that in order to make that possible.
Yeah, that's great. And there's a couple of questions around kind of the business development side, because I think that for a lot of people that becomes the challenging part, especially people not coming from sales. So the first question is around those, you say the 12 contacts. So people are but are you is it following up about business, just 12 times, or what's kind of the content of those 12 or more kind of connections that you're having with people, so that you're not that annoying person that's you ready to buy something yet?
One, it is not an email. So to be clear, those 12, I mean, if you're following up with something, you may count an email as they asked for this, I'm giving it to them, you may count it, but it is we call it a quality contact. So it's something where there is an interaction, and it never, ever, ever are you asking, do you want to buy? I mean, you're just not. It's the conversation is about, tell me what issues you have, what's painful, what's going on, where you may need help. And do I have expertise, the experience, do I have the practice area in order to come in and help you? But it's, I think a lot of people kind of, and I'm glad that, back when, I joined P&G, I'm sure a lot of you, they used to call it sales, and they went away from that and call it business development, because there's really no selling. I mean, it is, you've got the capability, you've developed that trust, and now it's just a matter of lining up their pain points, their issues, their internal capability with your own external capability and expertise and experience that you have, and that's the conversation. So if you find yourself calling and saying, do you want to buy? And then, that I shared the example of this good friend of mine back in, 2014, December, when I was selling to him, and nobody wants to be sold to. What they want is help with a problem they have. That you now add value. That is something that people will buy, but you just can't sell that. You just can't.
Yeah, and I think that I just read a book called Same Side Selling by Ian Altman that speaks to a lot of what you're just talking about, and changes the equation of selling of, it's not about trying to convince someone, it's not about influence or persuasion, it's about coming together and working together to potentially solve a puzzle, and thinking of it more of a puzzle rather than a game. Seems to kind of help with that mentality where it's hey, seeing if you actually fit the mold can help them out or not. So I think that kind of those things are certainly aligned. From the business development and maybe even positioning side, there's a question around, do you have kind of, how would you say is your kind of point of differentiation when talking with people about how Symphony is different than other places that they might go to?
I mean, all of our conversations are about our executive advisors and the experience that they bring. And, I shared the story about the 150 years experience at, one of our larger clients. And that really for us is our differentiation point. Again, to who we're competing against, which tends to be, we tend to see a lot of, the larger consulting practices competing with what we're doing. That actually was not how we started Symphony. We had not planned on that. And so we talk almost exclusively about that expertise, the experiences, and then this element of, we bring you people, one, that have a ton of experience. They have a broad experience. They have a lot of expertise. And, oh, by the way, this is where some of these intangibles come in. They want to be here because they want to fix your business and they're excited about your business. And that the client doesn't see until we're in the door and we finish our first engagement, and they look back and say, your folks really, it's almost we're an extension of their management team. We had one of our larger engagements with one of our clients, and they were going through a major transformation and had a lot of consulting companies. I mean, you name it, that they were working for them. And in one of the locations, we had our small team there, and the minions of the Accentures and D&Ts and EY, everybody was there. And our team actually sat with the management, where everybody else sat, I forget, a barn or something somewhere further away. So we really, because of that expertise, become a lot of in a lot of situations just an extension of management, and that's what we like. We want to be that trusted advisor. We want to be the person that they turn to. Because they know that, one, we're dependable, we're going to do the work, we're going to give them honest assessment, whether or not we get the next sale. A lot of our engagements are come and fix a problem and leave, and our clients like that about us.
Great. And one area that, and it's probably potentially a topic for another webinar, but one question people had is, how did you start to, especially when you're first starting out, how did you figure out things like pricing as you're going in these conversations?
But kind of going back to, talk to friends, I had a lot of people who, I was friends with, or my other partners had friends who have worked in the consulting space, who, have, a lot of experience in that space. So we were lucky to find people like that, and then, have conversations where they'd be very transparent and open with us. And so I think that has allowed us to kind of figure out kind of how do you make this work, especially from the pricing standpoint, but also just from a modeling standpoint, putting together the sales funnel and what is successful sales tracking and a process for CRM, or, how do you go about that? And, especially all of us coming from CPG, that helped us a lot in order to kind of fast circuit. And then, we read books and did that type of stuff, but it was more of those mentors and coaches that really helped us do that. We could not have done that on our own.
Yeah, and I think that is that's a great kind of setup for, again, the value of the P&G alumni network, right? If you make sure that you're on LinkedIn, connect with the P&G alumni LinkedIn group there, because that's where you can start to see second and third connections for people that you want to make connections to, or leveraging the network that you already have, which you spoke to kind of at the beginning or as part of the presentation, as being incredibly valuable to learn what you don't learn what you don't know, and learn that from people within the network, I think is great. So last kind of question that people have, and then also I'd love for you to share kind of any next steps or things that you think, if people want to learn more, what to do. But people are interested you've mentioned a few times of your advisor group is kind of important. If people are interested in it, are you looking for additional advisors now? If people are interested, is there a way for them to contact you, or are you kind of where you're at? Some people are kind of interested in that side of things.
I tend to tell people I believe P&G HR should still be paying me, because I spend almost as much of my time finding clients as I do talking to people looking or thinking about leaving P&G. And so we are always recruiting. Again, we wouldn't have the number of practice areas that we have today if we didn't continue to recruit. And so again, one, because we need to hire a lot of people in order for this structure to work, which is, not everybody wants to be full-time doing consulting. Some want to go be with their grandkids or go to the beach or, have a portfolio work. So we are always recruiting because of that, and always recruiting because we want to kind of continue to provide our clients more and varied services. So yes, we are always recruiting, and feel free to contact us. We'd love to have the conversation.
Excellent. And any final kind of closing words before we wrap up with some announcements?
Nope. I want to thank everyone for this opportunity. I hopefully you got something out of it. I enjoyed it, and I'm glad my partners convinced me not to share financial planning analysis with you. So you have a great rest of your weeks.
Yeah, well, I think you did a fantastic job with that. We've already gotten feedback from people through the question area that it was very helpful, that they really enjoyed it. So thank you for sharing that expertise. Thank you to Nat and the team for convincing him to talk about the lessons learned, because I think based on registration numbers and the questions and engagement that we had, that it certainly was a topic that people enjoyed. Just to kind of wrap things up as far as announcements go, we don't have any kind of big events like the 2017 conference that we're pushing there, but you can sign up for updates at pgalums.com. You can also support the foundation. We'll have continued conversation around the foundation and ways to give back. You can certainly look to sponsor and partner with us as the alumni network to get in front of different people. But more importantly, if you just want to either volunteer to start or join a chapter, if you want to see what kind of local opportunities are in your area, or you have any other thoughts, you can send those to hello@pgalums.com. I've been Andrew Tarvin, your MC and host. Right after we close this out, you will receive a survey, so certainly feel free to fill it out, share information, talk about how awesome Jeff was, and also what kind of future topics you would like for us to hit on. Yeah, we'll see you next month. Thank you everyone so much for joining. Jeff, thank you so much for coming and dropping some knowledge on us, and have a rest of a great day, everyone.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.